Hey everyone, how's it going? Luke from A Taste of AZ. On today's episode of the podcast, we've got Jim Cunningham, General Manager over at Merkin Vineyards Scottsdale Taproom. He's going to talk us through all things Merkin Vineyards and talk with us a little bit about the general Arizona wine scene as well. As a guest host, we've got Christina Barrueta, the renowned Valley writer. She wrote the Arizona Wine Book. So let's jump into the podcast. Well, everyone, we are here at the Merkin Vineyards tasting room. We have Jim Cunningham, our representative from Merkin Vineyards, and we have Christina Barrueta. Was that right?
Nicely done. Better than I can do.
So yeah, our resident wine expert here, because I am not a wine connoisseur like yourself. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the tasting room that you've got here down at Merkin.
Well, sure. We are the kind of newest tasting room here in Old Town. There are 5 Arizona vineyards that have tasting rooms here in Scottsdale. But as far as our company, we are also kind of the new kid on the block. We've been down here about a year and a half, and it's going well. We are kind of unique. All of our locations are, but we do have all 4 of the brands that our winemaker makes here under one roof. So it's a good experience for people just traveling that can't get up north to the Verde Valley. That's home base for us to come in and sample or try or even take some bottles back home with them.
And so give me the breakdown of the different locations you have and where you actually produce your wines.
Sure, certainly. Well, biggest breakdown, we'll start with the wines themselves. Our 2 kind of primary labels are going to be the Merkin Vineyards wines, and that is going to be our younger and fresher wines coming from our 70-acre site down southern Arizona, just outside of Wilcox. That's our Albule Memorial Vineyard down there. So all of the Merkin fruit coming from that site. As you travel up north to the Verde Valley, it's home to our Caduceus Cellars fruit primarily. We've got about another 40 acres spread across 5 small sites there, from the hillside of Jerome going down into the valley just outside of Cottonwood in the Cornville area. So primarily home to the Caduceus Cellars fruit. We do source a little bit from southern Arizona for some of those blends. And then also we have our 4-8 Wineworks, a wine co-op that we own and operate. And then also our Pussifer canned wines.
And so what was the rationale behind having the different production sites? Is it to get the different flavors of the wine?
I think it's been just, for us, it's been a very organic kind of growth. Home base was in the Verde Valley, but still very young kind of region, up and coming. But Wilcox definitely much bigger, much kind of easier to do all at once for that. So that's the site that we took over several years ago, and with that, we were able to, now kind of achieve the vision that we wanted everything we grow to be our own fruit and to be Arizona fruit. So we were no longer had to source, outside from other vineyards or outside of Arizona even. So
how would you kind of describe the wines that you guys produce?
For the most part, our wines are going to be dry, kind of European styled. I'll say very restrained. There's nothing that's going to be like smack you in the face kind of flavor. But there's got to be a lot of nuances. There's a lot of subtleties and really enjoyable stuff. It's all going to be very food friendly, and just something you can sit down, relax, enjoy, or take as a gift or to a family gathering, and no one's going to look at you strangely.
Absolutely, yeah. Before we hopped on the podcast, you were talking about the different food programs that you guys are developing down here more. What kind of food are you guys serving here right now?
Right now, our big focus is, of course, Arizona. We grow our own grapes, make our own wine, and we want to showcase, the other side of that coin with agriculture Arizona has. So for us, we actually have several gardens and greenhouses, herb bed, and orchard. We grow a lot of our own produce on our own sites up north, and we really want to feature that. Stuff that we don't grow or don't grow enough of, we source from local farmers and local producers. So our meats and cheeses, we're not making our own meats and cheeses. We're sourcing those from local producers. Crow's Dairy, Goat Cheese, Rovey Family Farms for some of our other cheeses. And then we're using a lot of the stuff from German Sausage Company just down the street here on Indian School.
So when you come in here, it's kind of like you're taking a trip around Arizona with all the different things from your different facilities and other places around. Has it been like that from the very beginning, or did you kind of find your way into sourcing from those different places?
It took a little while. I mean, I've had a little experience with Arizona products, but there's always new producers and fun new things to discover. And I think that's one of the great things about Arizona is we continue to reinvent ourselves and do new things. So it's been a gradual evolution, but But that's the fun part. We started having just some really high quality European, cheeses and meats, and while we were trying to find, some quality local sources. So
As a plate of meat and cheese arrives right now, that's
the
perfect
goods
timing
just
right
roll
there.
out.
What do we have right here?
Well, this is going to be our house bread. That's actually made up in the Osteria, just a real
Okay.
nice, light, airy focaccia. We have a little bit of our house butter that we whip. There's always fresh and fun stuff in there. I think right now we've been doing pumpkin spice for the holidays. A little bit of our homemade mustard. Cheeses, we've got cheddar and long sticks there. That's going to be pecorino. Those are both from Rovey Family Farms. Those are actually sheep's milk cheeses as well.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of make them unique.
So this whole board is all Arizona sourced.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. And that's something that we've kind of witnessed, not necessarily on this scale or in this refined manner, if you will, but we've witnessed the Arizona focus in craft beer. And it's crazy how, obviously there's a lot of crossover between craft wine in Arizona and craft beer, but it's really refreshing and really exciting to see how much of a focus there is on not only the grapes that you're sourcing for the wines being Arizona produced, but everything else you're doing as well. Is that something, Christina, that you've witnessed from other wineries in Arizona as well?
Yes, and it's one of the things that I love. For example, if you're bringing guests from out of town and you want them to have a true taste of Arizona, I can't think of a better stop than Merkin, where you get to taste. I know, like, Maynard uses his apples in the hard cider. I think herbs and fruit are in the gelato. So they get a taste of everything, from whether it's these snacking plates, which, by the way, I think will be amazing with the new sparkling mead that just came out about a week ago, you said, Jim?
Yes. Yeah, just launched last weekend, so still very new. A lot of fun for us. We've gone through a lot of it already, but again, using Arizona honey, we've got mesquite and wildflower honey coming, I think, primarily from northern Arizona, but just a really light, crisp, not too overly sweet, but just the right amount of sweetness, and then just a real nice, bright bubble to it.
So I don't know if this is the case, but I'm going to declare it here and now. We just broke that Caduceus has their new sparkling mead coming out. Thank you, Christina, for making that note there.
I'm a little obsessed with it, so.
Yeah, so is this your first time having it?
Yesterday, because
Okay.
when I was up at Merkin in Cottonwood, I think Thursday, I picked up a couple cans, and I poured myself a little Sunday sipper yesterday, and it
Very
was
nice.
delicious. And I said, this is timely because I'm going to be stocking up.
It's crazy how many different products are coming out of Arizona, especially in more newly developing things like sparkling mead that are growing a market, really. Not too many people even know that these kinds of things exist, let alone that you can stop in here and get a sparkling mead alongside all these other Arizona products. How have you guys been kind of evolving the things that you've been producing lately to kind of cater to the growing wine market?
I mean, for us, things have always been just that slow kind of natural growth. There's, it's been following a lot of just, other user cues and other guest interactions and just, the trends. What are people looking for? What's kind of new? What's on the edge? How can we, kind of break that boundary and move things a little bit forward? Like, there's some amazing mead in Arizona. I mean, Superstition is unreal with what they do, world-class stuff. So,
And they just opened in downtown Phoenix.
yes, they did. But it's just following some of those other trends. Stuff in cans has been hugely popular here in Arizona, and I think the craft beer movement really is been people been pushing that to the forefront, and it's, I think, only natural that the winemakers kind of jump on board with that as well.
And I think you have 4 cans now?
We have, the mead makes 5. So
5.
we've got 3 sparkling wines, a white, a rosé, and red. Then we have our hard cider with estate apples coming from up north in the Verde Valley, and now newly the mead.
I've not had a sparkling red wine before. That's something I'm very interested in trying.
It's definitely, I'll say, unusual for a lot of people. It's not something you see very often, especially at least in the States. Europe maybe a little bit more. There's pockets where that's the village style, but by and large, it's not something you see very often. So I think that's another way that Maynard's kind of pushing that boundary. It's still the familiar, it's wine, but it's a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that coming from the craft beer side of things, people like their classics and whatnot, but they like, at least occasionally, to push those boundaries like you were saying. What has the response been from people stopping in here as far as the newer things that you brought about?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. People are just, for the most part, we get a lot of tourists in here, and people are just amazed at what Arizona is doing.
Absolutely.
And just the uniqueness and truly high-quality stuff that's coming out of our state.
Well, in the way that you guys are curating the experience, not only with the wines obviously produced in Arizona, but the other locally produced ingredients as well. Before Eric and I started doing this podcast and really digging into it, visiting farms and things like that, we had no idea all the crazy stuff that's going on in Arizona, like all these, high-quality cheeses that we've got in front of us. How has that journey been for you, learning more and more about everything that Arizona has to offer?
Oh, it's been amazing. I love Arizona. I'm proud to live here and call this home. I've been here about 20 years now, and I keep learning something new every day, and it's a lot of fun.
I bet it's a real shock. I mean, it was for me at least, seeing, the variety of products that Arizona produces, from grapes to honey to cheeses and things like that.
It is.
What's been the most shocking for you that you've kind of come across and found out that's really piqued your interest?
For me, it's probably on the beverage side, just that Arizona is producing some really amazing sake.
Okay, yeah.
Right. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona's capable of doing about anything, I feel, and just the fact that we have some world-class sake here is just unreal. But it's
At
cool.
the prestigious Tokyo competition, he won best sake made outside of
That's
Japan.
Crazy. It's really kind of mind-boggling once you really go into all the different things. Like, I wasn't even thinking about the sake side of it. And then you point that out, and it's like, who would have expected that Arizona, of all places in the world, has the best sake? It's crazy. Best sake out of Japan. It's crazy that we are attracting and building that kind of market out, and consumers are really responding to it, where it's not like people are just trying to do crazy things like make a sake in Arizona, but people are really getting behind it, not only the consumers, but the industry side of it as well. How has that been for you guys, building those relationships with more local people and kind of rising up Arizona food and beverage, if you will?
Oh, again, it's for me, it's a real joy just to introduce people to all the really cool, really unique products. But having that relationship with farmers and the artisan producers is just a lot of fun. I mean, like, we've got our goat cheese from Crow's Dairy. I mean, Wendell is, the owner, operator.
Who
milker.
doesn't love Wendell, right?
Wendell is awesome, and he still makes his deliveries for the most part by himself. He comes in his overalls, just a really, pleasant guy, just a really down-to-earth, just loves what he does, and it shows in his, high-quality products. And when I get to introduce that to, some guests who are shocked that Arizona, has these kind of things, and then they taste it, and they're like, oh, this is probably some of the best goat cheese I've ever had in my life. I'm like, that's what Arizona's capable of.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially, for me, I've lived here since I was like 3 years old. So for the past 20-something years, I haven't even realized how much is going on, let alone somebody that comes and visits, because this is obviously, like you said, a hot tourist spot. Someone that's coming and visiting and having this in front of them, it's almost overwhelming, everything that's going on. You almost lose a sense of how crazy it is that all this stuff is happening.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people have no clue of the agricultural, side of Arizona that we grow. Right. They come in, they cactus and golf, and that's about it. And
and we have 2 growing seasons, so we're very agriculturally rich, and I think that's one of the things that surprises people the most when they go to a restaurant or a winery, to really see the depth and breadth of what we can offer here in Arizona.
So you're obviously spending a lot of time with consumers as well, and sharing this information with people. How many new people are you seeing getting into wine? Are you seeing it, quickly growing and bringing on a lot of new people like we've witnessed with craft beer, or is it still kind of in the beginning phases of that big growth?
I think there's been a big jump, I would say. I don't know what you think, Jim, in the last 5 years, with people being aware of Arizona wine, whereas when I first moved here in 2008, I would just get a very confused look if I mentioned Arizona wine. Grapes grow in the desert. They picture dusty vines covered in, from the sandstorm.
Tumbleweeds rolling by
right,
and stuff
exactly.
like that.
But I think people are more apt now to they're not as surprised, and they're more willing to try an Arizona wine.
And so from the producer side of it, I assume that producers have expanded rapidly, not in terms of, just your guys' production, but the amount of producers across the state. Is that correct?
I think so. And also it's because the people that have paved the way are mentoring other people. And we have an incredible school here for vintners. And we'll probably talk about that because Jim Cunningham is a graduate of the Southwest Wine Center at Yavapai College. And to me, they're really building a future of Arizona wine. The graduates that are coming out, I know Heartwood Cellars, I think the first wine they submitted to the San Francisco competition on graduating, they won like gold, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty incredible school. Could you share a little bit what it's like?
Oh, sure. Program is, a lot of fun, but very, very informative. And, you can go at your own pace. They've got both sides, the viticulture and the enology side. So you can go 2 years, get your degree in viticulture and enology, or you can just
What is viticulture?
Viticulture is the science of growing grapes. Enology is the science of making wine.
Okay.
So you can do the whole program as one, get your degree in that, which is what I did, or you can just go, for a year and on either side get a certificate, or just kind of pick and choose a couple classes that might help you with where you are, or just something that you want to further yourself with. But very unique program. One of just a small amount of schools in the U.S. that has both full functioning winery and vineyards on campus grounds. Tasting room operates up there. It's all student made wines. And
some have won awards.
And some have won awards. It's a
Jim,
lot of
were you involved in any that won an award?
I have been involved in some of that, yes. One of my blends won at the Arizona Republic's Wine Awards for best like a red.
What is that feeling like coming out of I figure it's at the end of your kind of tenure at the school, right?
Yeah, for me that side of things, the winemaking side was the last part that I went through. But yeah, it's a phenomenal experience. I can't take credit for even half of it, but it's a big group effort and just being around all the people that just are engaged and passionate about making wine and what Arizona is doing is really a breath of fresh air around here. And I really think that's one of the reasons that Arizona is growing as quickly. Every year you've got educated, professionals being turned back out into the workforce. You've got people starting their own vineyards now, or people that are going back to work for existing places. And the quality, on my side, on the restaurant world, I've seen the quality just increase excrementally every year. It's awesome.
And I think Maynard had a big part in that program. Didn't he donate the very first vineyard?
Yes, there's a small 1 acre block that's right there next to the wine center. I think at least when I was up there, it was all Negro Amaro grape that was planted. They've
I
managed
think
that.
I'm not sure it was the first Negro Amaro vineyard in Arizona.
I believe, and I'm almost positive the first Negro Amaro in the state, but. A lot of fun.
I have no idea what any of that means, but it sounds delicious.
And one of the things about Maynard, which I really like, is he's willing to experiment. He'll try late harvest, early harvest, but he also his varietals. He's would you say Italian, Mediterranean?
We have really three distinct kind of portfolios of wine that we do. Probably the biggest is going to be our Italian line, all Italian varietals, and then Spanish as well, and also our third is going to be our French Rhone Valley grapes.
And so those are grown at both locations, both vineyards, or are they grown?
Yes, we grow a little of a lot of different things at all of our sites. Now there's some sites that have just a couple specific grapes, and that's the only place we're growing those. But there are several grapes like Grenache that we grow, northern and southern Arizona.
And so, being that it's an agricultural product, I would assume that has ramifications on the flavor of it. Does it have ramifications? Do you end up blending them? We're really at the mercy of Mother Nature and what happens each year. This last summer, hot and dry, extremely dry. So, a lot of our stuff is going to be drip irrigation, but it really does, change the flavor and the color of the grapes. I think harvest for a lot of people this year in Arizona was, total, harvest was down quite a bit from previous years. But we also started harvest, a good 2, almost 3 weeks earlier than we normally would.
just because fruit was ripe and it was ready to get off the vine. But yeah, every year it's fun. I mean, that's the kind of cool thing about, small artisan wine is that year to year, those varietals are going to be a little different. For us, we don't necessarily stick to one set pattern where this is always going to be this. It's more of a template base. We know we've got our Italian wines, and they might be specific, on it's going to be this group of varietals, but percentages are going to change from year to year because we want to look for that balanced wine and not just, this is always going to be Cabernet and it can't ever change. Mm-hmm. No, that we want to make solid wine that people enjoy drinking.
It always blows my mind, the technical knowledge and expertise that goes into producing any craft beverage. But with wine specifically, you have a whole nother, you have a farm and you have a winery. They really are, in certain sense, two separate entities. Whereas with beer, you're basically sourcing all of your other ingredients. And so it's really crazy to think that people are managing all that and running it, but it's a really beautiful product that gets created from it. And especially if you do have that technical knowledge and experience, you can really shape the drink that you're trying to produce.
Oh, yeah. I mean, on the beer side, you could probably equate it to, a brewer owning their own, hop farm. Mm-hmm. And just all the varieties of hops and the treatment of those is kind of, how the grapes are going to be in a sense. It's a big part of the equation, and there is a lot of agricultural knowledge that needs to go into that.
Absolutely. So how did you get into wine?
It kind of started just as a job and as something to do. I started working in food and beverage, and
I think I met you at Prado, right? Or
yes.
the Monte Lucia. You were the director of beverage, or
Monte Lucia. I was running Prado and helping out in a lot of different areas, some events and stuff there. But yeah, I've been all over the valley working hotels and resorts primarily. Between events and restaurants, and I worked up at the Boulders for a while, both there at their main building and also at Spotted Donkey.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I started here in Arizona, actually, at the Arizona Biltmore. I was there for several years, which that kind of opened my eyes into all the possibilities of food and beverage and what was going on there. I mean, we'd have large groups and, stuff like we had Celebrity Fight Night when I was first there, and just, that aspect of things. And, It was those times where we had all the high-end wines and all these, people were buying just hundreds of dollars of bottles, and I'm like, what is this stuff? What is so special about it? Why is it so expensive? And as a young person getting into the beverage side of things, it just blew my mind that something could be that expensive, and what's in that bottle. And it's, for me, it's been a long evolution of learning, and every time you think you know something, every time you think you're becoming an expert, you realize I know nothing, and there's a whole nother door that is beyond here with a whole nother set of knowledge. So
when did you, if it ever even has happened, when did you kind of feel like, oh man, I really feel comfortable with what I'm doing here, and start taking the initiative and going to the wine school and things like that?
Well, the wine school happened while I was actually working at the Monte Lucia several years ago, and I want to say I graduated from the program in 2017, so it's been a couple years already now. But for me, I always found pleasure in the beverage side of the food and beverage equation more so than the kitchen, although I love to be in a kitchen. But all things liquid have always attracted me, and that's, I spent time doing the beer thing. I studied, the Cicerone program. I've done the mixology side of things and getting into cocktails, and, I've even studied, the water content, and there's people out there that are water sommeliers, and just the differences in there, which is truly unique. But some reason throughout my career, things with wine always kind of came back up, and it's something that's always kind of been more prevalent. And I was at a time at Monte Lucia where a lot of coworkers and peers were thinking about going the sommelier route and getting their certifications or taking the tests, and I'm like, I don't know if that's for me. I felt comfortable at that point with the service side. Now I was nowhere near a master level somm by any means, but I wanted to get my hands dirty, and that's when I think I'd heard it on the news, something about the wine program, and it was still fairly new at that time, just a couple years in, and wife and I decided to take a trip up north to the Verde Valley. I took a tour of the school, and I'm like, this is awesome. I'm going to get hands-on knowledge. And for me, I wanted to understand how things are made. That helps me understand things a little better, just being able to see it and do it. So,
Well, and you know more of the story behind whatever bottle you're serving, which really enhances the experience for consumers. How is that how have you witnessed that impact?
It's irreplaceable at this point. Made a lot of great connections at the school. A lot of people in Arizona wine now, were classmates of mine. But spending time in the fields, like with the grapes, I've spent a little bit of time in even our, I'll say the Merkin and Caduceus vineyards before I was actually even on board here as part of the team. So when I came on board, I'm like, oh, well, I know that site. I know these varietals, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot more personal connection there, and I think to me, it helps me tell the story better as our guests come in.
Absolutely. So we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but if you could kind of dig into the story of Merkin and Caduceus and kind of what separates them and a little bit more of the historical side of it.
Well, sure. I mean, everything really started with Maynard James Keenan. He's the owner and winemaker. And Maynard moved out to Arizona in mid-90s, kind of left LA and all the hustle and bustle behind. And I think for him, Arizona's really kind of been that life on the edge. Life in Arizona can be, with desert and cactus and just, the lack of water here, it can be kind of extreme, especially as you get outside of the Phoenix and outside of, I'll say, this kind of safety of civilization. But for him, I would like to think that it's more of a creative escape as well. And he wasn't into wine when he first moved to Arizona. He didn't come to Arizona to grow grapes and make wine. For him, Jerome and the Verde Valley was part of a vision that he had, and it really fit his time and his place. And as he was here for a few years, he started to hear people mumbling and groaning about growing grapes, and he was like, well, what's this all about? What's going on? And he decided, he's like, well, why the heck not? Let's get my hand at this. And
just a small little endeavor to toes in there.
And for us, things did start small. I mean, just a couple acres, off your side of your home is all it really takes. And years later, I mean, that was late 99, early 2000 that he planted the first vines of the Caduceus side. By 2004, we had our first wine that came out under the Caduceus label. By 2005, we had several wines, and the first Merkin Vineyards wine came out as well, the Chupacabra. So the Merkin and Caduceus side, sometimes people come in and don't quite understand the difference. At the end of the day, they're really just two sides of a coin, and they've really grown up together side by side. And I like to see the Merkin side as besides just being the young and fresh wines, kind of the more carefree, screw you wine world. We don't need to have all the pomp and circumstance that exists out there. You can drink something fun and enjoy it, and you don't need to get all the technical. Let the winemaker and us on the backside worry about the details, and you can just open a bottle and relax and have fun. Now, I look at the Caduceus side as a little bit more of our higher tier. It's got longer aging, but it's the bottle that you can take to your somm friend, and he's going to geek out over all the stats and the numbers on the bottle, and be just as happy. So we for me here in this tasting room spot and wine bar, I can find a way to please most palates and most consumers.
So would it be a stretch to say that the Caduceus side is more of like the sophisticated wines, and the Merkin is a little bit more of the playful side of things?
I think you could say that. Yeah, I kind of look at the Caduceus kind of like as our reserve tier, or the higher end. A lot of companies do that. They have 3 different labels.
Sure.
And, yeah.
So from your perspective, being not necessarily involved with Merkin or Caduceus in a formal manner, what are some of the things that really stand out here for you that you think really sets them apart?
Well, as I brought out earlier, I love the experimentation that you guys do here, because they'll try. As everybody knows, Maynard doesn't really follow rules, so I really love that in his wines, because you can taste that. You can taste that passion. he's very, very serious about what he does. He,
Oh, yes.
Starts from the ground up. He roams the vineyards with some of the best winemakers in the world, from Australia and Spain and Italy. So he really, this is something that is near and dear to him, and I really love being able to be kind of on the ground floor with somebody building, a line like this that is true Arizona, because it's so new here. We don't need to follow the rules.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We can see what works here. What is our varietal that is going to put, Arizona on the map? So that's why, to me, Caduceus and Merkin is very special.
Yeah, that is a really special thing you touched on there, because not only are we kind of defining what the flavors of Arizona look like and who the players are, but also bringing in people from outside of Arizona that might not know how great the wine can be from here, but also that we have, like we touched on earlier, the best sake out of Japan and things like that. And that's something that I always get excited to hear about, is people coming from other states and realizing how special Arizona is and everything that we have to offer, whether it be, cheeses like this or sparkling wines. And so I guess, what do you think the future of Arizona wine looks like?
I just see kind of right now as a stepping stone to something larger. Now, will we ever be like Napa or Sonoma? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people make those comparisons saying, Arizona's where Napa was 30 years ago. Well, possibly. But I think we'll become our own unique thing. We'll become a little different. Everything Arizona does has that Arizonan flair, and how else to describe that other than experiencing it, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that's the fun thing. Things still are kind of the Wild West out here, like Christina was saying. We don't have to follow, all of those rules and stay inside those neat little boxes like some other more established regions are. And that's what I think is fun. It's the continued experimentation and people just playing around. I mean, I'll be, checking on what other winemakers are doing and seeing all the new releases, and I'll find somebody's got a new varietal that I've never heard of. I'm like, where is this from? And it's, some obscure grape that probably is the only planting in the U.S., and they source it from somewhere out of Europe, and now they're making wine out of it. And it's like, that's awesome. That's really cool.
How do the different wineries get along around Arizona? Is it more of kind of like, we're doing our own thing and we see you doing your thing? Or is it more like the craft beer world where there's collaborations and people hanging out and getting beers together and really working as a team to grow the Arizona craft beer scene?
Oh, I think it's definitely taken notes from the craft beer scene for sure. Still a very small industry, for the winemakers, and for the most part, everyone gets along pretty well, and there is a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of, especially like down south in Wilcox or Sonoyta, it's, driving down the street and asking your neighbor, hey, how did you do this? Because I'm growing these grapes now, and I know you are already doing it. Do you have any tips or pointers? And a lot of people are very friendly about helping each other out, and I think that's what we need right now is, if everyone's doing well, it's going to increase awareness and bring more attention to what Arizona's doing. And I think, honestly, that's probably a big reason why we have stuff like the 4-8 co-op, and, why Maynard's doing a lot of stuff is just to help raise the bar as Arizona as a whole.
I'm sure that's something you've witnessed as well.
Well, especially when I interviewed people for my Arizona wine book, that came up a lot, where people like Kent Callaghan,
mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the amount of people that just, attributed his mentorship and his help and, his kindness, because he's one of the pioneer winemakers here. But you'd also hear stories where somebody needed a crush pad really quickly, or this equipment broke, or they needed help getting their tasting room started or the production facility, and other winemakers just jumped in and helped out with that. So it makes your heart happy when you hear that. And it also makes you want to support these winemakers, because if they're doing all of this and putting so much heart and passion into, a farm, as you said, which could be devastated by hail one year, or, those grapes died because of that reason, or there was a frost, you want them to succeed. So I think it's very important for, a lot of people source local. They don't think if you're going to source local, then source local cheese, as Jim said, and source the beverages you drink.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've noticed not only in craft beer, but also now in craft wine and in the food scene in general, food and beverage in general in Arizona, is there is a tremendous amount of collaboration. And I can't really speak to other areas all that much, but from the chefs and producers that we've talked to, that's not necessarily something you see in other scenes. And that, to me, is one of the big differentiating factors of Arizona, especially when it comes to developing the flavors of Arizona. And that's really awesome to hear that it's not just in the other things that I've come across, but also in wine as well.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions people have about Arizona wine are?
I mean, the biggest one, of course, is the fact that we can actually grow grapes. People from outside of Arizona are just amazed. And most of them just think of Arizona as, what they've experienced in Phoenix. And,
Sure.
The biggest misconception is get outside of Phoenix, explore Arizona as a whole, and you'll find that it's a very diverse state. There's, everything from, hot and dry here in Phoenix up to, pine tree forest, high elevation in Flagstaff, and everything in between. So, just once they get their mind out of the hot and dry and cactus, then they start to really appreciate the wines. And the other kind of misconception, people come in and they're looking for, I'll say, standard stuff that they would buy at a typical wine bar or restaurant. They're like, oh, do you have Cabernet? Do you have Chardonnay? And while some people still grow that, it was brought over in the 70s. As something that early pioneers started to plant, and some people still grow it. We still grow a little bit of it. It's probably not the best suited for our climate and conditions, and breaking people's, minds out of their box. And hey, try Sangiovese, try Grenache, try Tempranillo, something new and maybe a little bit different. And that's when their mind still really starts to awaken and like, oh, this is what Arizona's all about. But yeah,
and this seems like a premier tap room to have that experience at, with a focus on kind of pushing those limits and trying new things. This seems like a place where if you're trying to not only learn about some of the more classic styles, but also get some of the new flavors, especially with an Arizona focus, this is one of those places to visit.
Oh yeah. We pride ourselves on being able to help educate people and, not only our own story of what we're doing, but what Arizona is doing here. And, we get to operate kind of as two different businesses here in a sense. Daytime feel is going to be a lot more tasting room, and it's a lot of one-on-one and, oh, what's this flavor? What's that grape varietal? And, then you switch gears in the evening and it comes more that chill wine bar where people can just come hang out and relax with Arizona wine. And kind of one of the other fun things here is being in Old Town Scottsdale, you'll have people that wander in and don't even realize what they're wandering into. Maybe they're just looking for another drink or somewhere to waste some time before they go to dinner. They'll come in, grab a glass of wine and hang out. And, after they're getting in, they're like, oh, this is really good. What is this? Where can I buy it? And they find out that, oh, it's Arizona. And they're like, I didn't even know you guys do wine in Arizona. And
what rough percentage of your traffic is out-of-state tourists?
That always varies, but I would say right now it's more than half.
Wow.
Even through COVID and everything, a lot of people from out of state are coming to Arizona, and that's what we were really missing, and a lot of people were missing, over the COVID shutdowns and reopenings and everything through summer and even late spring was all of our travelers that keep us afloat.
Well, and that's really special to think that all these people, that high of a percentage of people are coming and getting that education where it's not, what some people would perceive as the wine industry. It's not snooty at all. It's not, oh, you don't know this. You don't know that wine can grow in Arizona with all these varietals. It's a focus on educating people, with a large portion of those people being from out of state. It really sets us up for attracting people and becoming known as a wine destination, in the greater picture, a food and beverage destination, which I think Arizona is probably one of the most slept on places
definitely,
as a food and beverage destination. Outside of wine, what Arizona food and beverage gets you excited?
Our produce here in the state is phenomenal. I'm huge fan of going to our local farmers markets and the restaurants that are using that. Just a couple blocks away we have F&B, and Charlene over there and Pavle are doing amazing things. bringing a James Beard Award to our state is huge for the food and beverage scene, and a lot of people traveling don't realize Arizona has that potential, and it's really cool to turn them onto that as well. But yeah, for me, it's our produce, just the amount of stuff we can produce, and the variety of things that we're growing in this state.
It's very special. What about you, Christina?
Well, I love that you brought up the sake. I think that we have amazing distilleries out here, and a lot of the winemakers are making award-winning, rums down at Elgin has won some prestigious international awards for their rums. Flying Leap has a grappa and brandies, and so I think it's really great to experiment. And as Jim brought out earlier, this is a good place to not be intimidated. In Arizona, we welcome you to come in and ask about wine, or, I usually like this type. What would you suggest? And that's a great starting point, I think, for people to do is tell somebody knowledgeable like Jim when you come in here and say, this is what I usually drink. What do you think I should try?
Oh, yeah. The most common thing that people, when they come in from out of state, they're like, oh, well, I've been to XYZ. I've been to Napa. That's, my wine experience. Or I've been to France, or I've been to Italy, or, and they have these kind of preconceived notions about how a tasting room experience is, or I'll hear horror stories more often than not, about trips to Napa where, they were ignored or treated as inferior because they didn't have the wine knowledge or understand terms. And so sometimes people are a little, cautious about the experience as well. They're not sure that they want to put themselves out there and expose that they don't know what they're talking about. And I think that's one thing Arizona does really well, is help to break down those barriers and make people feel at ease and at comfort with trying something new, or even just trying wine in general.
Yeah, with people like you, Christina, kind of breaking down that barrier outside of the tap rooms, introducing people to new places through exciting content and sharing people's stories. I figure that's something you've witnessed outside of here and throughout Arizona as well. Would you say that?
Yes, definitely. I think we're really making our mark as a food and beverage city.
Oh, yes.
Whereas, even when I moved here in 2008, so 12 years ago, it was I feel like just starting with recognizing the farmers and the artisans. And now people are really embracing that, and we need more of that, because the more that's embraced, the more that supports the farmers and artisan producers, and then that grows, so it's a symbiotic relationship that benefits everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have a beautiful cheese board in front of us that we still need to dig into. But before we go,
definitely.
Is there anything else that you guys want to send people off with? A final message for Merkin Vineyards and Arizona wine?
My words of advice are just go out, try stuff, experiment, try something new. Have fun with it.
And I would say when you go to a restaurant, ask if they have Arizona wine. Even if they don't, you might be putting a bug in an ear where
Absolutely.
The manager says, wow, 3 people this week asked for Arizona wine.
Oh, yes.
I think I should start carrying it. So that's
Well
what I
said.
would suggest.
Well said from you both. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for Christina for sitting down with us. I'm sure we'll do something in the future much like this, because we want to come back and drink more wine and eat more cheese and meats and stuff like that. So thanks,
good.
guys, and looking forward to talking again soon.
Yeah,
Thank you for
likewise.
having
Thank
us.
you.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, there you have it. This time, the podcast was with Merkin Vineyards. Make sure to pick up their wine, make sure to visit their tasting rooms, and follow them on social media. Also, follow A Taste of AZ on social media. See you next time.